everybody, this is Dezda, and I am creating a tutorial to teach you how to turn a solo cup into a sunflower. I'm making these for my daughter's wedding, which had to be postponed because of COVID, which kind of stinks, but also gives me a little more time to get some of these done. So first we're going to go over what you're getting. For this project, you will need 9-ounce solo cups, scissors, heat gun, spray paint, acrylic paint, glue gun, glue sticks, paintbrush, and a cup of water to clean your brushes. Okay, so we're going to start with cutting the petals into the cup. I just start at any edge, make a kind of a half moon shape like that, and then do the same thing on the other side, and I cut all the way down to the circle on the bottom of the cup so that you have a piece like this. You can see that. And I'm going to do that all the way around, and I try to keep the edges of the petals where the bend is. I try to get it pretty close to touching so I can get more petals. I don't really have a pattern for this. I just make however many petals happen to fit on this time because sunflowers come from nature and they're all a little different. So if you have a smaller petal and a wider petal, it really doesn't matter. Not going to show up on the final cup, honestly. The last cut is always the most difficult one because you have all these pieces flashing everywhere. But I've got this one big piece left to cut here. So I'm going to cut into that petal. So when I lay it out flat now, you can see there are the petals and there are these other wedges. I'm going to cut these off as close as I can to the circle now. You can save these pieces if you like. I've done that and made some smaller flowers, just real simple flowers to kind of fill in between the sunflowers, but I'm saving that for last in case I run out of time because the sunflowers are the most important part. So we're going to cut off these edges, all these pieces. You can either trash or save to cut into smaller flowers, petals that you can glue together, and then you end up with this. Now it's going to be bouncy, so to take care of that, I'm going to use my heat gun and flatten it. Okay, so I've got my heat gun. I'm going to set this flat. It's going to take a couple seconds for it to warm up. I use light heat because if you do too much, it'll start curling the petals, which is what you're going to do eventually on the regular petals because they have all these curves, but you don't want that to happen now. You want it to lay flat so you can spray paint it. You'll know because it'll start to kind of bend. I just want it enough, you can tell here, just want it enough to flatten it and stay flat. So it's as simple as that. And then we're going to move on to the spray paint. Here, I use 3 or 4 depending on if I feel like it needs to be fuller after I get 3 pieces down. And I'm just going to simply spray paint. Always put something down or you will destroy your furniture or grass or whatever it is you choose to spray on. I shook these before I started taping. If you feel they need a second coat, you can put a second coat. Not really necessary though. Okay, usually by the time I'm done spraying all that I have, because I usually go through the entire 50 cups at once, and I've spray painted yellow, then my brown is ready to go because seriously, it's dries pretty quick. And you'll notice, I mean, it ain't nothing special. It's just enough to get paint on there to create some depth. And also, if you don't spray paint and you go straight to acrylics, your paint's going to peel. So it's very important to not skip the spray paint step. Okay, now that the spray paint has dried, we're going to paint with acrylic paints. I've put the yellow, and I'm just going to go through and paint it on right on top of the spray paint. And like I said in the last step, the spray paint step is very important. It gives you a nice base to work on, plus it will keep your paint from peeling off the plastic, because you definitely don't want that to happen. All right, now that I've put a layer of the yellow on, I'm gonna double dip in yellow and the King's Gold and do it one more time. This will give me a little bit of different colors, so it's not just one flat color, so you get a little more depth into your piece. And it'll show more once the paint dries. They look really close to the same color right now, but once it starts to dry, you'll see a little bit of more of a difference. Not a huge one, because you don't want it to be like a line where the colors change, because that's not what happens in nature, but just enough. Now I'm gonna get a little bit of the chestnut, and from the center, I'm just going to fan out. And I start from the center of the flower, and I just kind of flick my brush. Not so hard that I'm gonna spray paint across everything that's out there in front of me, but just enough to get these nice edges, because on this real sunflowers, it has that where the color starts to change, and then the tips of the flowers are what's the bright yellow. So if you need to look at a picture, just go on Google and find you a nice picture of a sunflower and go from there. Now, I also do the same thing with my dark umber. I don't go out as far. I just want a little bit. This is going to help with the depth in the end. You want depth, or it's going to look flat, and people are going to be like, what'd she do, make that out of a plastic cup? You want people to go, she made that out of a plastic cup? Like, no way. Not, oh, yeah, that looks like a plastic cup. That's not. Okay, once you've got all of those painted, you like how they look, we're going to start forming them into flowers. This is where the magic happens, I think. You're going to grab your heat gun. We're going to let it get really hot, and it's going to start to curl the petals. I do one at a time. Also, a side note on your acrylic paint, if you're impatient, you can use a regular hair dryer and dry it. It goes a lot faster. This is the heat gun. It's going to take a second to heat up, but once it does, you'll know, because the petals will start to curl like that. And you can go in while they're warm. You can kind of move them around how you want. Sometimes I try to cut mine like that. Change it up a little bit. Let's see. It's kind of like shrinky dinks. Remember doing those as a kid? I taught high school art for a while, and I remember when I started teaching shrinky dinks, it was so cute. I never saw high school boys get so excited about art as they did when we got the shrinky dinks. And they would sit at our little convection oven and just stare and watch the shrinky dinks. They were so in awe. And it was just so funny. And I thought, wow, I thought everyone did shrinky dinks as a kid, but I guess not. I thought that was very amusing and entertaining for me as well as for them, because seeing them get excited about anything an adult shows them is pretty exciting. So I just curl the edges a little bit, kind of form it into different shapes. You don't want them to all look the same. You want them to look different. You're going to do this on all 4 of your pieces. So once you're done, I'll come back and show you the next steps. I'm going to finish these off. not on video. I'm going to do one here, and then I'll come back and show you the next step once I have all 4 formed to how I would like. So your piece will look like this. It'll have wavy edges. Let's see if I can get that to focus a little better. And, okay, I'm gonna go do my other 3 and I'll come back and show you the next step. Okay, now that we've got all 4 of those curled, I've heated up my glue gun. While that's heating up, you kind of want to decide which you want to be like your bottom pieces, and you can play with them and try to decide. I personally like the fatter petals at the bottom, and if I have some with thinner petals, I'll put those as top layers. We're going to use our glue gun in the center. It'll curl a little bit on you, but it'll flatten when you put other pieces. And you want to put the petals so they're falling in between the others, and you'll have some that don't. And you have a space. So I'm going to make sure with my next layer, I'm going to fill that in. A little more glue. I'm going to pick one of the bigger petals and make sure I fill in that empty space on my alternating pieces. And then finally, my last piece, got a little bit smaller petals. And see, you don't necessarily need 4 pieces. You can kind of judge by how it's coming along, but I'm gonna go ahead and put a 4th piece on this one just because I'm using it as my example. So we're almost there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my glue gun. I need a new stick here. And we're going to make little dots of glue in the center to kind of be our sunflower seeds. You want to leave a little space in between them to come back and fill in, because if you try to put them too close together, they're just going to blob up and you'll have one big blob of nothing on your center of your flower. When I put a little down, and I kind of spin it so I don't get that as much of a string as you normally do with a hot glue. And just fill in the empty spaces until you've got the entire thing full, or to how you like it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, I guess if you're doing just one flower as a showpiece, you may want to make it a little more perfect, but I'm doing close to 100, so I don't think anyone's going to examine them real close up or judge me, so I'm not real worried about it. Okay, once this is done, you're going to let it dry, and then we're going to paint it with some black and brown to get our deep dark centerpiece. And then our last step will be the clear spray paint to get the real deep colors. So I'll be back when that's dry. Okay, once your hot glue is dry, and you want to make sure that it's dry, because if not, you'll run your paintbrush, so touch it, make sure it's dry. We're going to use black. Go in here and just paint it all over. You can go up into the petals a little bit if you want, kind of blend it all together. I'm going to use a little bit of my burnt umber. Put that in there as well to get a little more depth going on. All right. Now, that's the final